Filtering data with where. This is the query that we used in the last lesson. We're seeing the data in our table. We see all columns and all rows. We just learned how to limit the data set to only show the columns that we want to show. But in all of those examples, we saw all rows in the table. What if we want to only see some of the rows instead of all the rows in the table? Well, we can do that by changing our select query a little bit. Let's add a new line, but before the semicolon. We can limit the rows returned from our query by using a keyword called where. Adding an extra keyword into a query is called a clause. This means it's a part of the overall query. And this where part of the query is also called the where clause. So in this where clause is where we specify the data or the conditions that we want to use to return or limit the rows returned by the query. Let's say we only wanted to see the records where the first name is equal to Sarah. To do this, we add in a condition. We specify where first name, which is the column, then equals, then we specify our text value. This should match at least one of the records in the table. In this example, we're selecting all data from the customer table where the first name is Sarah. If we have a quick look at the results from our previous query, we can see there's one row that should be returned. Let's click execute to run the new query that we've written, and we can see that there's one row that's returned here. The other data is not returned because the first name does not equal Sarah. The reason that Sarah is inside quote marks and not first name is because first name is a column and Sarah is an actual value that we want to check for. If we remove the quotes from the word Sarah, you'll get a red underline because there's no column or table called Sarah. If you run the query just like that, you'll get an error. So let's add the quotes back in. What happens if we look for data where the first name is John? We can run that query and see our two rows here for John, but not the row for Sarah. So you can see that the where clause can be used to find data that matches a certain criteria. What if we want to work with a number? We can do that. Let's say we wanted to find records where the order credit was 20. We can change our query to look something like this. We specify where order credit, which is the name of the column, then equals, which is what we want to check for, and then the number 20. Because 20 is a number, we don't need to surround it inside quotes. We can just specify it like this. Click the execute button and you'll see the results of your query. You can see that we have one row with an order credit of 20. We can do the same thing, but enter in a value of 50 to see what's found for that. What if we enter a value that there are no results for? For example, an order credit of 60. We can run this query, and a table is shown at the bottom with no results in it. This is not an error, it just shows you results that you're not expecting. There are no results or no records in the table that match an order credit of 60, so nothing is returned. This is okay inside SQL Server Management Studio, but if you have a website, for example, that shows data that meets this criteria, you'll need to handle this particular situation, such as showing a message saying no records found. So that's just a basic demonstration of what the where clause does. It lets you filter the rows that you want to see in your result set.